Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Cultured Nerd Podcast. On this episode, we're going to be talking about what the hell is happening with the Batman films. Apparently, earlier today, both Batman Part 2 and The Brave and the Bold got announced that they were being heavily delayed. Andy Muschietti, the director of The Brave and the Bold, reconfirmed that he is going to be attached to the project and the podcast, but then said that that the work on the project had been postponed, and they're allowing him to film a whole nother film before he gets to work on Batman. And then within probably like an hour of this news coming out, Variety drops a report that Matt Reeves and the Batman Part 2 are being delayed till 2027. So lots of crazy stuff happening behind the scenes. We're going to talk about it. We're going to reconfirm some details, talk about some new stuff, and then everything in between. But we're not going to try to mislead you. So let's get right into it, everyone. And here we are.
Chaos in Gotham City. Who will be the savior we want? Is it this Batman or this Batman? But it sounds like we're getting no Batmans.
Not for a little bit, to be honest, but there's plenty of reasons behind that. So we're going to let's just talk about it. I mean, earlier today, Andy Muschietti was on, a podcast came out this morning that he was on for, what on earth is the name of that podcast? It is California something. Let me see if I can pull up the name.
California Raisins.
No, California Secreta? Secreta? I'll just say that right. California Secreta. It's a Spanish podcast. He was on it this morning talking about many, many things, including The Flash and everything in between. They asked him point blank what's going on with The Brave and the Bold, and he said, I am writing right now a science fiction movie that I would like to do. The Batman project has been postponed a bit, but there could be another film before it, possibly that one. So he basically said that as of right now, the Batman project has been postponed a little bit. He thinks that there may be enough time for him to finish a whole nother project beforehand, which could be a big thing or could be a little thing, because some directors can film an entire film in a month. Some can take 6 months. It depends on the scale of whatever he's working on. But he said that there is a small possibility he'd be able to work on this project before he even gets to The Brave and the Bold.
That is also probably coming from the DC side, correct?
Yes, that's coming from DC Studios.
That they would like, maybe they're not ready to push that yet with the resources that they have. So that's like, let's get through let's get through Superman and what that's going to look like, and then maybe talk about Batman.
Well, I mean, and that comes down to the truth of the matter. I think a lot of people are jumping the gun and saying, oh my God, that means it's canceled. This is how it starts. This is where it ends. This blah, 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 blah. We already know that Warner Brothers has been in a fiscal dump since the takeover, right? They were already on the verge of bankruptcy till Discovery came in. And then once Discovery came in, then the real numbers came out. And the Discovery was basically like, you guys fucking lied to us, and the books are way worse than what we thought. So there was even lawsuits behind the scenes that the previous people at WB, the ones who all got fired, were literally cooking the books on certain things, which kind of misled Discovery in the purchase. And then when the purchase happened, they were like, oh my God, this is bad. So you can't really blame Discovery for doing all the cost cutting they're doing, because they were in such a hole that the press wasn't even being forthcoming about how bad it was. But
when you talk about cooking the books, or you talk about these secret numbers, I feel like this is what we hear about all the time with Disney projects, where it's like, oh, they did another round of reshoots. 6 months later, they did another round of reshoots. And they give these estimates of like, it'll be like $20 million. But then it goes like double that, right?
Yeah, easily. So there's a lot of that happening.
Where do they hide that money? Do you hide it in, do you call it something else? I mean, I don't understand. Aren't they watching the money go out the window?
You would think, but it's funny because like I always think back to that line from the movie Independence Day, where the guy was like, "How did they afford Area 51?" He's like, "Well, you didn't think they spent $50,000 on a toilet seat, did you?" Like they can hide the money however they want to hide it and whatever cost they want to hide it, but things aren't as expensive if the groundwork is already done. But that's a whole different issue. The issue that was happening at Warner Brothers was like literally they were lying about the numbers that were being coming in on HBO Max, making it look far more lucrative than it actually was. They were lying about ad revenue. They were lying about ad spending because they were like, "Oh, we spent this much money on marketing," but then they found that the marketing budget was being spent on their own stuff. So they were basically paying themselves to market these projects. So that was a nice, fun way of fraud in its own regard. So there was a lot of like double dealing and incorrect reporting and all this other shit that was happening, and that just looked really bad. So we know that Warner Brothers has been in a hole for a while. David Zaslav has been basically confirmed as the Antichrist of Hollywood for the longest time because people didn't understand how bad it actually was. And then you have the Flash movie, which cost $1 bajillion because the previous management they literally filmed like 4 films, and then they finally dumped it on the new regime, and the new regime was like, "We got to finish this," and it's not even ready because they spent so much money refilming this thing so many times that they had to finish it and then just put it out.
I don't know if an answer has been given on what is the right answer, because on one hand I hear about that model and then go over to Sony and it feels like all of these movies are the first draft. Now I know that's not always true, but I mean they don't know what to do. I mean they've burned their everything to do with the Spider-Man franchise and all these villains. The audience is not there for them.
Yeah.
They're baffled. The kids head of the studio was like, "This Craven movie's good. I don't know why people aren't seeing it."
It's just kind of funny too because like you can also kind of chalk that off to like negative PR. The whole system of information as it stands right now with social media. One person says one thing, the echo chamber echoes it 1,000 decibels higher, and it goes from bad to worse. And you can argue that across the room. I mean, people would always say that, "Oh, this movie was gutter trash. This was terrible," and then you sit down and watch it, and you're like, "Did we see the same thing?" Because it wasn't nearly that. Like, it just that's just how it is now. Like social media has become kind of a blight in itself.
I promise we'll talk about Batman. This will be relevant when we get to Batman. Is there any chance that Sony will sell Spider-Man back to Marvel?
No, it's too lucrative still. Even with their failings, they're still making money. All they have to
Then
do is make one Spider-Man film, and they make all the money back that they lost on their 4 spin-offs. So no, they're
and
not. They're
is the
not letting
goal
go
then
anytime
to
soon.
get another Tom Holland movie made, because Tom
Yeah,
Holland obviously is going to be in these next Avengers movies, correct?
right. And from all the behind the scenes details that was found out that they actually fully had the ability to put Spider-Man in these spin-offs, but they couldn't really land how it was going to work because they wanted to make them part of the universe, but because of the restrictions that Marvel put on them, they're like, we could do multiverse, but if we do, what Spider-Man do we use? So there was never any reason why they couldn't do it, other than their inability to figure out the best way to do it. So the thing is, they could have easily just said, "This is all Andrew Garfield's universe," and then everyone would have been happy. Like, you could have just done it. But aside from all of that, so as we're going to get back to the current stuff, the what we do know behind the scenes with The Brave and the Bold is that this initially was pitched as a Batman and Robin film, Robin being Damian Wayne. The initial rumors that came out of the thing was that this was also meant to be a tentpole project where Batman is like 10, 15 years into his career, a little bit more seasoned than Superman, and he's already had a Robin. He's already has now Nightwing, a new Robin, his son, Batgirl. The whole Bat family was meant to be established in this project so that they could eventually spin off into like Young Justice, Teen Titans, all other stuff. So the from my understanding, Andy has reconfirmed he is still in this project. It's still part of the DCU. It sounds like it may be getting back to pitch phase. Like they may be repitching some new ways of approaching it instead of saying, because what we know is that James Gunn said flat out, unless the project has a solid script that we're happy to spend the money on, we're not making it. And we will send it back to the the drawing board until it is perfect. So it sounds like they're trying to find the perfect way to do this. But circling back to all of our discussion about why the money was the issue and all the stuff, DC is the DC brand is riding a lot on this current corner of Superman and all the other things. And we do know that right now, Superman, Supergirl, and Lanterns are all in production, with Supergirl and Lanterns starting filming in the next 6 weeks. So because of that, I'm willing to bet that their money's a little tight. So they're waiting a few months to see how big of a scale they can make this project. And that's why they're delaying things a little bit. They're postponing it so they can say, we made the money back. Now we can say this budget's 300 million instead of 100 million.
And I would assume that the money side of this indirectly is also going to affect the other Batman movie, because Robert Pattinson's going to take work. He didn't, you know what I mean?
He already has. That's the thing. They just announced the other day that he's on board with Chris Nolan doing the Odyssey. So regardless of if they said we're going to start filming Batman tomorrow, you have the cinematographer working on Dune Part 3, and then you have the lead jumping onto Nolan's next big Universal project. So there's already some scheduling issues with the production unless they started filming tomorrow.
Yeah, and how long do you think Nolan films for? 6 months? I mean, how long is his?
He's not a small filmer. He's like a perfectionist filmer. He can do like, I'll do my filming in 2 months, but then he goes back again and again and again to make everything perfect. So I don't for a second think that he could be like, oh, we're going to film Batman in February and then film this in March and then go back for Batman in June and go back for this in April. Like, you can't really make that work. So there's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of pieces on the board, and money is definitely a factor. And I think right now with The Brave and the Bold, for what they wanted to do, they need to make sure that the budget can land. And if even James Gunn said, unless Superman lands, what's the point of doing the rest of the universe? So they, on the other plus side, Superman has made the highest numbers of any trailer in WB history.
Yeah, and that's
like the whole world watched that trailer on repeat.
100%. I've also, and that's a good sign, especially if people are watching it 2 or 3 times.
At least, and probably in the first 20 minutes, and they watch it 20 more times after that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I showed it to my dad on Christmas, and he, you know my dad, he was a very big Christopher Reeves fan. He liked the Dean Cain show from the 90s. He didn't really care for Superman Returns because he said it was pretty much this Christopher Reeve stuff, just ignoring some of the other movies. And he liked Man of Steel, but he also said it was not really, he said it was a bit darker than he wanted to be because Superman is not meant to be the dark character. He basically was like, Superman's supposed to be the inspirational hope character, and it was really sad watching Superman be sad all the time. Mm. So he was very much like, I always say my dad is like the epitome of the general audience, where he's not well versed enough to really get the nuance, but also like he knows enough about it to say, yeah, I get who these characters are. We don't need to explain it twice. I showed him the trailer and he's like, there's Green Lantern in this? I'm like, yeah. He's like, and who's the girl with the wings? I'm like, Hawk Girl. He's like, there was a Godzilla thing? I'm like, yeah. His dog is here? I'm like, James Gunn likes animals. And he's like, James Gunn, why do I know that? Guardians of the Galaxy. Oh, he's good. So like, he was watching, he's like, this could be fun. This could be actually a really fun film. And it looks like it's got some seriousness. Superman is bleeding in the beginning. Okay. So he had lots of questions about it, but he actually said, yeah, let's go see it. That looks fun. So that's a good indicator to me that he's on board with it.
Yeah, and all of those pieces, I think it's funny when you lay them out like that. Like, no, James Gunn has done incarnations of these types of characters. He's going to bring all that Grootness of a nonverbal character and put it into crypto.
Yeah. And we do know that
we're not talking about the currency. We're talking about the dog. And I think it's going to be, I think that stuff, they play their cards right. I mean, that's what they were trying to do beforehand with crypto, right? Like with that Rock movie, it's like, he's a standalone character.
He was trying to really bank on the crypto, the super pet being like a family thing. And then sure enough, James Gunn comes in and says, I could do crypto better.
Yeah.
So it's always a little funny how that works out, but it's a very interesting thing because you watch all this stuff that's happening, and I'm seeing that like general audiences are really responding to this, and if maybe even half the buzz maintains over the next trailer and the next posters, they're going to be fine. And I think they just need it to be fine first before they start saying, okay, now let's green light and start pre-production on the rest of the stuff. Because in the world of Hollywood, if you want a project to get made, you have to find producers, unless you want it to be made a certain way. James Gunn is probably not wanting to bring all these cooks back into the kitchen that they had with the DCU. They don't want to bring Rat Pack Entertainment. They don't want to bring Chuck Roven. They don't want to bring all of these people who had all of these says, like, oh, I'll give you 20 million for this, but you need to include a giant spider in it. Like things like that derailed Tim Burton's Superman movie. They're trying to avoid by getting all of these people out of the room. So to do that, they have to have the money secured first. Otherwise, they can start bringing in external producers, and then they have to be beholden to their wishes.
I do feel that they want to make something in-house. I also think that they also might be waiting to see what this Superman movie inspires other writers and directors.
Yeah.
That other people are going to go, oh, from this story, I want to pick up on this thread. And I think I think that the threads that are being laid down will not be known until we see the film. But it feels like it's universal. It feels like it's multi-planets, like that, you know, we're not only talking about Earth in this, we're going to space. And I think if he injects any of the flavor, I mean, he defined Marvel space. I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy gave us a colorful, fun, funky universe. And most of the new movies, we spend time in space. We go to all the space planets. Every movie, all we do is go to space planets.
And they're 100% trying to emulate what he did. So they're trying to basically be like, look, James Gunn, this is the same thing. We like this, right? And it doesn't always work because some of these directors just don't have that same vibe. And that's why it doesn't work. Sorry, I'm just reading some nonsense online. Online is funny. Right now, there's so much rhetoric going around about what exactly is happening behind the scenes. It's actually pretty hilarious.
So is Matt Reeves working on another project before the Batman project?
No. So what we know is that the Batman project script was never finished, right? We know that he was turning it in stages. He was turning it in chunks, and they were accepting it based on the chunks, but it hasn't been completed yet. The full script hasn't been done yet. James Gunn actually was asked today to comment on what was going on, and he actually said, yeah, sure, let's talk about this. James Gunn, Batman delay. So yeah, he was asked flat out, and he said that, yes, it is true. The only reason for the delay is there isn't a full script. Those who follow me here know that already. Matt is committed to making the best film he possibly can, and no one can accurately guess exactly how long a script will take to write. Once there's a finished script, there's around 2 years for pre-production, shooting, and post-production on these big films. So that's why he said, yeah, we had to delay it to October 2027.
Also, can we also factor in that the Penguin television show was a big success and really pushed the universe? And I feel like if he had a movie where none of that was going to be addressed, I think you got to have now some of that into your movie, because there will be an audience that is going to be hopping over from that television show.
Yeah. And now to kind of address something from the grapevine a little bit, since this was announced earlier today, I've been hearing from a handful of people that there's actually some personal things happening in Matt Reeves' life that have caused him to not focus 100% of his time on Batman. I don't know if it meant there was some health issues or there's some family situation. All I was heard is that he's having a personal situation that has taken his focus away from script writing. And if you factor in the personal factors and you factor in the writer's strike, the Hollywood strike, the COVID stuff, you factor in all of these details, you can say, yeah, this guy, he probably deserves another 6 months to work on a project. So if he's not ready yet and there's something going on that's keeping him from being ready, let him have his time.
You know what's funny is I didn't even think about that. That movie is like a COVID movie. You can see it, like all that like amazing sets and stuff like that they can make look like sunshine. I wonder if we get a more robust Gotham City when he's allowed to shoot outside and there's no questions about how many people could be on the cityscape. I wonder if we see some stuff like that, because that's what Tim Burton was doing. Tim Burton put Batman in downtown and he's beating people up along the sidewalks.
Yeah, and then we kind of got a glimpse of that in the Penguin. And you saw how big and fleshed out Gotham looked in Penguin, because it, like, there's a couple shots from like the Batman where you had him with like a handful of people, and then you didn't have the rest of the movie like that. So it was a lot of like, here's a crowd, and you could tell that those were filmed very differently compared to the rest of the film. But
there was the talk of that Joker show. Based on this show, could they do another TV series?
Yeah,
in between the time of the next movie.
They 100% could. And the reason why they could do that is pretty simple. Matt Reeves didn't write every single episode of The Penguin. Matt Reeves did not direct every single episode of The Penguin. He had an idea, he hired a showrunner, he hired a scriptwriter, and he worked with them to make it happen. You could do that again, easily.
Do you think that we get this recycled Law and Order, but the Gotham PD show, and we see them go investigate crimes by the Penguin, crimes of the Riddler henchman doing fucked up 7 things around the town? Is there maybe
they could easily say, let's do the Catwoman When in Rome story that we were talking about. We could do that story where Selena and her new sister are going out and talking about how bad Dad was and finding out more details about Dad murdering people. Or
I would watch that show if they do it like Roman Holiday and then they do a big heist. I would love to see that. I'd love to see the character, the mob boss girl. She's back in prison. We got to see her bust out of prison.
Yeah. They could do a lot of stuff with this this universe, and they have all the pieces there if they want to just say, hey, this is what I want. If Matt Reeves just sits down and says, this is a plot that I need developed over 8 episodes, and hires a script writer and a person to flesh it all out, and said, this is what we got. And he says, hits all the bullets. Let's do this.
Yeah, okay.
They can easily move forward with him still working on his project and having little impact on what he wants to do. But the bottom line is that I'm hearing from a lot of people, a lot of industry people, the universe is still separate. The Batman universe is not being folded in the DCU. So the online rhetoric about how they're delaying it till 2027 because Pattinson's going to be the new DCU Batman, that's nonsense. They're still keeping it separate. Personal issues have caused him to not finish the script. They're giving him more time to finish the script. Simple as that. And Andy Muschietti is
but they basically lost project. Right, but they lost Pattinson this year. So this year is going to be his year for Nolan, and they can start shooting January of 2026.
And that was the other factor, was that they said if we're not ready to start filming within 6 weeks, we have to delay it about a year.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it went. It was just casting availability, the script not being completed, and
I also feel
whatever's
like James
going on
Gunn,
with Matt Reeves' life.
Yeah, and I also feel like James Gunn is fine kicking. He's got 3 movies that he's got to get done. The 3 you just named, and they all need to fit within the universe, not to mention the Peacemaker show. Like, I feel like there's already enough on his plate. Yeah. Maybe kicking Batman down the can a little bit further down the road, let it cook a little longer. It sounds like a good idea.
And what was also interesting about this whole thing was that before all of this happened, the big thing I wanted to talk about this week was how Matt Reeves actually talked about, not Matt Reeves, James Gunn had mentioned that the Flash is not a priority for the DCU. And someone asked him, like, oh, why are you focusing on Clayface instead of the Flash or Aquaman? And he says, because the script was done and it was great. Like, that's why we're doing it. And that kind of goes back to what he's saying. Unless the script is good, they're not putting money in it. But if the script is good, they're moving forward. And obviously the Batman wasn't ready yet, so they can't move forward with it. Simple as that. The Brave and the Bolds, if they're going back to pitch the script phase, then it sounds like they want to make that project better than what it could be. So that's good too. But the word is that he's completely skipping out on things like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, and the Flash right now because of the proximity of their DCEU counterparts.
I also think those movies are traps. Because if you do Wonder Woman, then you got to do a period piece movie. And I don't know if he thinks audiences want to see that. right now. I mean, I don't know. Gladiator 2 did well.
Yeah, not as good as the first, but it did well.
Okay.
But the reality is that they basically need to set a wide berth from the DC EU Snyderverse, DC films, whatever it's officially called, because it's never really given a real full name. It's all these fake sub names that they've had over the years. But he's basically, I mean, you had the big nightmare scene from Creature Commandos, where you saw all these dead bodies, all these people, and like the dead Batman and all that stuff happening in the background. Right? Oh, wrong button. This one. And apparently, one of these characters in the background is Blue Beetle from the Blue Beetle movie. And apparently, one of these ones off to like the far left of the screen, however you're looking at it, I'm looking at the far right of the screen where all these little people are. One of those characters is actually Wally West, not Barry Allen. So the idea that people are now thinking that since Hal Jordan is old and seasoned and John Stewart is being positioned as the younger Green Lantern of the Justice League, maybe they're going to do that with the Flash too. They're going to have a Barry Allen who's in his 30s to 40s who already has a Kid Flash, who the Kid Flash becomes the new Flash of the Justice League, the red-headed Flash that we had in the Justice League cartoon. So a lot of people are thinking that they're going to separate the incarnations, the audiences, by saying it's not the same Flash. That was Barry. This is Wally, and they're going to do that as a way to get people to not carry that baggage with it.
Yeah, I think you have to.
Yeah,
because you gotta have a speedster. You have a speedster. His name is the Flash. But with that, figure out figure out the one that you want to run with. And it also makes sense because of the Teen Titans connection, because I know that is a tent pole that they are building towards.
Yeah. We know that the universe, the DCU has already been fleshed out and the Titans probably already existed, and you don't need Superman to have the opening roster of the Titans. Just a Robin, a Flash, and a few other characters that were part of the OGs.
Yeah, so, and maybe you use that movie to introduce the Superman clone, and you have them, befriending him and stuff like that.
Yeah, you can do a lot with that. But like, from what I understand, is that they're moving forward with this idea that this universe is fleshed out, and if you're going to reintroduce these characters, they have to be pretty damn different than the last time we saw them. So to me, we saw the dead Wonder Woman from.
Well, we also see the dead Starfire. Do you think we get Starfire like Superman visits her planet and we meet her there?
I think so. I mean, you got the dead Starfire right there behind Superman. You got the Tamaranians, I think is what they're called. But Wonder Woman, you've got they are officially they did change the look of the Wonder Woman costume for this scene to make it not Gal Gadot's costume. So they're already setting up a different take on Wonder Woman. So to reintroduce these characters, they have to be radically different than the last time we saw them. You can't have something that reminds you of the last time you saw it. So obviously Wonder Woman has to be more comic inspired and no 300 style armor. It can't be armor. It has to be something different. If you're going to do Aquaman again, he has to be blonde. He can't be anything like Jason Momoa. And if you're going to do another Flash, why not do the redhead?
With as much as they fleshed out with Aquaman, I still feel that that underwater world was not defined enough, and I think that's fine. I also don't think that they know I don't think they have any idea what they want to do with those characters yet.
I don't think they care either. I think they're like, we're going to give it a few years. We don't need to do this right now. We can have a fully set up Justice League without having those core members right off the bat.
And you know what? If shit gets bad on Earth, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Aquaman already missing a hand. Let's go right to Hook on his hand. I do not deal with Earth dwellers. You do not want me around. I'm not fun to be around.
I mean, do you know what they did in the Justice League cartoon when they meet him? Like, Arthur, what happened? He's like, I hate humans. And he has this hook and he's like, everything sucks. Get off of my planet. That's all you have to do is just have a jaded Aquaman who has been down in Atlantis for years, is wanting to protect it, and doesn't like what people are doing.
Yeah, I think you
Ocean Master from the Aquaman films. So, I mean, that's kind of how they situated it in the cartoon. So you can easily do that, and it can be just different enough. But it's interesting because you have so many of these pieces, and people are just fixated on these two things. Yes, Batman is one of the biggest characters in all of DC. It's a huge, huge deal, and these delays suck. But we know that the Batman Part 2 was delayed till 2027 because pre-production, filming, and post-production, it makes sense logically, timeline-wise. But all we know is what Andy said today was, I am now writing a science fiction movie that I would like to do. Batman is a project that's been postponed a little bit, but there could be another film before I do that, possibly that one. That's literally all he said. He just said that it has been postponed a little bit, but he may have time to do a film or he may not. He doesn't know yet. It doesn't even say it's been delayed 2 years. It's been delayed this many years. It's like, they're telling me I can do it in October. That gives me 10 months to do something else. Like, that's all it could mean.
Yeah, and doesn't mean that other project gets off the ground. It means that he's going to think about that for 10 months and then can move over to this.
It could literally be.
Which all that script is probably done, right?
Which one?
The Brave and the Bold?
Probably going back to script phase. They're probably redoing it to make it. Like I said, they're probably weighing out some options and they're waiting to see how successful Superman is.
Okay.
But I could see them say, Superman had a huge ass opening weekend. Andy, get your pen ready. We're going to start doing this project now. And they start fast tracking it. Because, I mean, they announced Superman's script was already done, right? We knew that. And James Gunn had revealed that he had been commissioned to make Superman Legacy while he was working on like the Suicide Squad. Like, it was meant to be a Batman style Elseworlds project until he revised it into the start of a new universe. So we know that script had gone through a lot of iterations and eventually became what it currently is. But the Supergirl script was announced so damn fast and had a solid script so damn fast that they were able to say, holy shit, that's fast. Holy shit, it works. Here's the money. Go make that film. I could see them easily doing that with Batman. If they say, we're going to base it on these 3 books and we're going to pull plot points from these 3 books, they can get it done pretty quickly, especially if they do what they did with Supergirl and they actually hire a comic book writer to come in and write the thing with them. Like, that's what we had with Supergirl. They had Tom King, the guy who wrote Woman of Tomorrow, with the writers making that an adaptation. They could easily do the same with this. Hire Grant Morrison, bring him in and have him work on Batman and Son. Boom.
Come June of next year, 2025, do you think we get updates on all of these projects?
100%. I think that by the time this Superman is starting its pre-sale tickets and they know how good it's going to do, I could easily say, yeah, they're moving forward with this, they're moving forward with this, or they're canceling all this shit. So we'll know very quickly, but they're going to start getting their ducks in a row. And Andy's comments about being postponed a little bit doesn't say anything about time frame. Doesn't say anything about how far out postponed. Everyone thinks that it means it was pushed out to Oblivion and back. For all we know, he was originally planning on working on it next week. It's been postponed to February. That's what he could mean. We don't know. But he just said that he's working on the script for another movie he wants to do, and he would like to make that, and he may have time, but he doesn't know. That's the only thing that people are going off of right now. So,
right, and you don't know, and I don't know. Space could either be very big or very tiny, so we don't know what that project is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Space could be Alien 1 or Alien 2.
Right.
So, very different projects, very different scopes, very different budgets and sizes. So, who knows? It could be a small little, we're trapped in a room on a space station and the universe is closing in. Or it could be, we're on a desert planet fighting giant space worms. You know, space means a lot of things. So, but on that note, Michael, take us home.
If you'd like to support The Cultured Nerd, head on over to the patreon.com/the Cultured Nerd. Thank you to all for our wonderful patrons. If you have those cell phones ready, please like, comment, subscribe, do all of those things. If you've gotten to this far in the episode, thank you so much for doing so. Please do all of those things. Question of the week: what 3 Batman books do you want the movies to be based on? At this point, we kind of have an idea of what they're going to be, but if you could make any 3 Batman books, what would they be? Taylor Murphy is your host. I'm Michael Santel, your co-host. Drink water, eat food, take care of yourselves, and we'll see all you kids and cats next time.